The Trumpet of the Swan, Chapter 4, The Cygnets. During the night, the mother swan thought she heard a beeping noise from the eggs. And in the hour just before dawn, she was sure she felt a slight movement underneath her, as though a tiny body were wiggling there. Do we see her and see the eggs? You have eggs. You have eggs next door, right? Perhaps the eggs were at last hatching. Eggs, of course, can't wiggle around, so the swan decided something was going on, didn't know what. She sat perfectly still, listening and waiting. The cob floated nearby, keeping watch. A little swan enclosed in an egg has a hard time getting out. It never would get out if nature hadn't provided it with two important things: strong neck muscles and a little dagger tooth on the tip of its beak. The tooth is sharp, and the baby swan uses it to poke a hole in the tough shell of the egg. Once the hole is made, the rest is easy. The cygnet can breathe now, and it just keeps wiggling and banging and clawing it until it can free itself, and it wiggles free. The cob was expecting to become a father any minute now. The idea of fatherhood made him poetical and proud. He began to talk to his wife. He probably thought he was an author. "Here I glide, swan-like," he said, "while earth is bathed in wonder and beauty. Now slowly the light of day comes into our sky. A mist hangs low over the pond. The mist rises slowly like steam from a kettle, while I glide swan-like, while eggs hatch and while young swans come into existence. I glide and glide. The light strengthens. The air becomes warmer. Gradually the mist disappears. I glide swan-like. Birds sing their early song. Frogs have croaked in the night, stopped croaking, and are silent now. Still I glide ceaselessly like a swan." And his wife says, "Of course you glide like a swan. How else could you glide? You can't glide like a moose, could you?" She had a point there. Well, no, that's quite true. Thank you, my dear, for correcting me. The cob felt really small by what his wife had said. He enjoyed speaking in fancy phrases and graceful language, and he decided that he liked to think of himself as gliding swan-like. He decided to do more gliding and less talking. All morning long, the swan had heard the pipping inside the shells, and every once in a while she felt something wiggle beneath her. It was an odd sensation. The eggs had been quiet for so many, many days, 35 sleeps in all, and now at last they were stirring. She knew that the proper thing to do was to sit still and wait. Late in the afternoon, the swan was rewarded for her patience. She looked down, and there, pushing aside her feathers, came a tiny little head. The first baby, the first cygnet. It was soft and fluffy, but unlike its white parents, it was gray, and its feet and legs were the color of mustard yellow. Its eyes were bright. On unsteady legs, it pushed its way out until it stood beside its mother, looking around as it was seeing the world for the first time. The mother spoke softly to it, and it was glad to hear the voice of her mother. It was glad to breathe air after being cooped up so long, folded up inside a little egg. The cob, who had been watching intently all day, saw the little head appear. He was happy. He said, a cygnet at last. I'm a father, with all the pleasant duties and awesome responsibilities of fatherhood. Oh, bless this little son of mine. How good it is to see your little face peeping through your mother's feathers. Under these fair skies, with the pond so quiet and peaceful in the late afternoon. And there's the picture. Yep, yep, yep. Not too good at this picture part yet. Okay. "What makes you think it's a son?" said the mommy. "For all you know, it's a daughter. Anyway, it's a cygnet, and it's alive and it's healthy. I can feel the other ones underneath me, too. Perhaps we'll get a good hatch. We may even get all 5. We'll know by tomorrow." "I have every confidence that we will," said the cob. Next morning, very early, Sam Beaver crawled up. Remember Sam Beaver? That's the boy. He crawled out of his bunk while his father was still asleep. Sam dressed and cooked breakfast. A few strips of bacon, little slices of toast, a glass of milk, and he sat down and ate his breakfast. When he was through, he found a pencil and paper and he wrote a note to his dad. "I have gone for a walk. We'll be back for lunch." Sam left a note where his father would find it, and then he took his binoculars and his compass and it set out through the woods over the swamp to the pond where the swans lived. He approached the pond slowly and cautiously, with his binoculars over his shoulder. It was still only a little after 7 o'clock in the morning, and the sun was not up in the sky, the air was chilly, the morning smelled delicious. When he reached the log that he usually sat at, he sat down and looked through his binoculars. When he looked through the binoculars, the swans looked very close. They weren't, of course, but they were not moving. The cob was nearby, but both of them were very quiet, listening and waiting. When the both birds saw Sam, they didn't mind his being there. In fact, they rather liked him being there. They were surprised at him looking through binoculars, though. They haven't seen those binoculars before. They said, "Whoa, it looks like he's got very big eyes." And the mommy said, "I think those are really binoculars." And the father said, "Well, I'm not sure, but they look big." "Well, I like that," said the cob. "I like that very much. Perhaps the boys' binoculars will make me look not only larger than I am, but even more graceful than I am. Do you think so?" "It's possible," said the wife, "but it's not likely. You better not get too graceful. It might go to your head. You're quite a proud bird." "All swans are proud," said the cob. "It's right for swans to feel proud, graceful. That's what swans are for." Sam could not make out what the swans were saying. He knew they were talking and they were having a conversation, and just hearing them talk, he got excited. He was glad he was keeping company with these 2 great birds in the wilderness. He was very happy. In the middle of the morning, when the sun was higher in the sky, Sam put his binoculars up again and he looked at the nest and he saw what he had come to see. He knew it. A tiny little head came through the mother's feathers, the head of a baby trumpeter swan. The baby scrambled out onto the edge of the nest, and Sam could see its gray head and its neck and its body covered with soft feathers, and its yellow mustard legs sticking out underneath with their webs on them for swimming. And soon another cygnet appeared, and then another, and the first one worked its way down and out and then tried to climb on his mother's back, but his mother's back was too slippery and he fell off. Oh, he was just flopping around. The swan just sat, enjoying her babies, watching them try to walk. They weren't very good at walking. An hour went by, and one of the cygnets, more daring than the others, left the nest and teetered around and walked around on the shore of the little island. When this happened, the mother swan stood up. She decided, "These children are not very good at walking. Let's show them what the water's all about. Come on," she said, "and let's stay together. Note carefully what I say and do, and you do the same thing. Swimming is easy. Walking, not so much." 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Sam counted. 5 cygnets. As sure as I'm alive, I count 5 cygnets through the binoculars. And the cob, as he saw his children approaching the water, felt that he should act like a father. And he began by making a speech. Well, look at the speech. "Welcome to the pond and the swamp," he said. "Welcome to the world that contains this wonderful place, unspoiled and wild. Welcome to the sunlight and the shadow and the wind and the weather. Welcome to the water. The water is a swan's particular element, as you will soon discover. Swimming is no problem for a swan. Welcome to the danger you must guard against, the vile fox with his deadly teeth and his sharp claws, and the otter who swims under you and tries to grab you by the leg, and the stinking skunk who hunts by night and blends with the shadows, and the coyote who howls and hunts, and he's bigger than the fox. Don't eat the pellets that the hunters leave. They'll poison you. Be brave, be vigilant, be strong, and always follow me. I'll go first, and then you come along, single file behind me, and your mother will be in the back. Now, go ahead in the water, and be quiet and be confident. And look at them getting into the water. You see the mommy and the daddy and the little babies jumping off the land into the water. Splash. The mother swan, glad the speech was over, stepped into the water and called her little ones. The cygnets gazed for a second at the water and then, whoa, they weren't too sure, but they gave a jump and they were floating. The water felt good. Swimming was good, nothing to it. The water was good to drink. You could swim in it, and each baby dipped in and grabbed a mouthful, and the happy father arched his long and graceful neck over and around them, and he set off very slowly with the cygnets all behind them, single file, and the mother in the back. What a sight, Sam said to himself. What a terrific sight. 7 trumpeter swans all in a line, 5 of them just out of their eggs. This is my lucky day. Like all fathers, the cob wanted to show off his children to somebody, so he led the cygnets to where Sam was, and they all stepped out of the water and in front of the boy. All of them but the mother swan. She still stayed behind, floating around. And the cob said, "Go." "Hello," said Sam, who hadn't expected anything like this and hardly dared to breathe. "Hello," said Sam. The first cygnet looked at Sam and said, "Beep." And the second cygnet looked at Sam and said, "Beep." And the third cygnet looked at Sam and said, "Beep." And the fourth cygnet looked at Sam and said, "Beep." And the fifth cygnet, he opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He tried to say, "Beep," but no sound. Instead, he stuck his little neck out, and he took hold of one of Sam's shoelaces and pulled on it, like Barney does. He tugged at the lace for a moment, and it came untied, and then he let it go. It was like a greeting, and Sam laughed. The cob now looked worried. He ran his long neck between the cygnets and the boy and guided the babies back to the water and to their mother. "Follow me," said the cob, and he led them off, full of grace and bursting with pride. When the mother thought her young ones had enough swimming and they might get a little chilly, she stepped out onto the shore and she squatted down and called them. They quickly followed her out of the pond, and they went back into the nest under her feathers to stay nice and warm. And in a moment, you couldn't see any of them. At noon, Sam got up and walked back to camp, his mind full of what he had seen. He was happy. The next day, it was time to leave, and him and his father heard the Shorty's motor on the airplane in the sky and saw the plane approaching, and they grabbed their gear and their duffel bags and they said, "Goodbye, camp. We'll see you in the fall," said Mr. Beaver. "Goodbye," said Sam. And he shut the door of the tent and gave it a pat, and they climbed into the plane and soon were in the sky on their way back to Montana, their home. Mr. Beaver did not know that his son had seen a trumpeter swan bring off her young ones into the pond. Sam kept the matter to himself. "If I live to be 100 years old," thought Sam, "I'll never forget what it feels like to have my shoelace pulled by a baby swan." Sam and his father arrived back at the ranch. It was late, but before Sam went to bed for the night, he pulled out his pencil and his diary, and he wrote, "There are 5 cygnets. They're sort of brownish gray, but very cute. Look at Sam writing in his book. There's his bunk. Very cute. Their legs are yellow like mustard. The old cob let them right up to me. I wasn't expecting this, but I kept very still. 4 of the baby cygnets said beep. The 5th one tried to, but he didn't make any noise. He took a hold of one of my shoelaces like it was a worm and he was going to eat it. And he yanked on it until it untied. I wonder what I'm going to be when I grow up. He switched off the light, pulled the sheet up over his head, and fell asleep, wondering what he was going to be when he grew up. And that's the end of the chapter.